In this video, I'm going to cover the 3 best ways to save for retirement and also discuss what the pros and the cons are to each one of these 3 different strategies. A lot of times when people find out what I do for a living, they also ask me, what are the best ways that I should be saving for retirement? So in this video, I want to discuss what I think are the 3 best ways to save for retirement and also what the pros and the cons are to each one of these 3 different strategies. But before I do that, if you're listening to this, please head over to YouTube and check out my YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search Retire with Ryan podcast, you can find many helpful videos and past podcast episodes. And while you're there, if you can do me a favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel, that will greatly help me to continue to grow the podcast. Thank you. So the first way that I think you should consider saving for retirement, and chances are you're probably already using this, is through a traditional 401k, a pre-tax 401k. So let's first talk about what the pros are. So the biggest pro with a 401k is the employer match. Depending upon your employer, they might match 3%. Some employers put in even more than that. And this is going to go a long way towards helping you contribute to your account because this is in addition to what you're putting in. Another pro is that it can be automatically taken out through your payroll, kind of the belief in set it and forget it. You pick a percentage or you pick a dollar amount that you want to have coming out of your retirement account, out of your paycheck every time, and that goes into your retirement account and it's automatically getting done for you. You also can consolidate other retirement plans potentially into your 401k if you have old retirement plans or other IRAs that you want to move into there. Just to have everything in one account, that can be helpful. Many 401k plans also allow you to take a loan. So if you needed money to pay for the purchase of a first-time home or a college education or an emergency of sorts, you can set up a loan and take a loan from your 401k plan. There is a limit, however, of up to 50% of your balance or $50,000, whatever is less. There can also be a special tax treatment that you can benefit from. There's something I've discussed before called net unrealized appreciation. And this is where that if you have company stock in your 401k that you've been invested in for a long time, stock in the company that you work for, and you've made a good profit on that stock, if you follow certain procedures, when you take out that money, it can actually be taxed at a capital gains tax rate, where normally everything else in your 401k is taxed at an ordinary income tax rate. So be aware of that anytime you're considering doing a 401k rollover. You want to know whether or not you have company stock and you want to take advantage of this tax benefit. Another pro is the ERISA protection. ERISA is the Employee Retirement Security Act, and that has certain provisions in it that protect you as an employee so that your company doesn't go bankrupt and all of a sudden your money is no longer there. So there's certain protections for that. There's also disclosure that anytime you have a retirement plan, you have to know what the fees are. So you get disclosure on that, and if you're not getting it, maybe you have to log in and look at your account. There's also a fiduciary obligation that your employer has to act as a fiduciary when managing the plan. So they're supposed to keep an eye on fees and costs and also investment selections to make sure it's a good mix. And there can also potentially be protection from creditors. If you ever go through a bankruptcy, let's say you took out a loan and you owe money on a car and the lender secures the ability to collect that money from you. Well, if all your money is in your 401k, they most likely are not going to be able to get that. However, if you owe any federal tax debts, criminal penalties, or if you're going through a divorce and there's something called the Qualified Domestic Relations Order, or QDRO, which is where your spouse is entitled to part of your retirement plan, the money would have to be paid out in those situations. And some providers also provide you free advice. So if you're looking to get help on what investments to pick or how to select your investments, you might be eligible for free advice. Now let's talk about the cons with the 401k. There are contribution limits. So the standard contribution limit for this year is $22,500. So that's the most amount of money that generally you can put into a 401k plan. However, if you're over 50, there is an additional catch-up of up to $7,500. But there is more than that can go in. There's up to $66,000 that can go into your 401k plan. If your employer puts a match in, that doesn't count towards the $22,000 or the catch-up, or they might allow for profit-sharing contributions. Some plans also allow for after-tax contributions, which could even allow you to put in more than the $22,500. Another con is that your money is generally not accessible until you're 59 and a half, or it can be subject to early withdrawal fees. So excluding the 401k loan, if let's just say you had your money in a 401k and you want to cash it in, take the money out, and you're not 59 and a half, generally you're going to pay taxes and penalties on taking this money out. Now, there are some exemptions. I'm not going to cover them here, but generally there are penalties, so that is a negative. Some 401ks have high fees. Not all 401k fiduciaries are really, I would say, holding up to their fiduciary obligation. They could have the money in a plan that either charges a high administrative fee or has high investment costs inside the investment options. So you really have to look into that anytime you're in a 401k and make sure that those fees are reasonable if you're going to be using this as your savings vehicle. And you may have limited investment options. It all depends upon what your employer is offering you, and there's always going to be a menu of funds that you choose from. So you'd want to look at that first to see, is it diversified? Do you have a good selection there? And then some of these 401ks also offer you a brokerage window where you can open a brokerage account and get even greater selection of investment options. That could offer you thousands of investment options, because if your account is, let's say, at Fidelity, you'd have access to many of the funds that are available through any Fidelity brokerage account. And the last negative that I want to highlight is that all 401k plans are subject to something called required minimum distribution. And this is where you reach, currently now it's 73. Once you turn 73, you have to take out a certain amount of money from that account. So you do get the benefit of pre-tax contributions. If we're talking traditional 401k, the money goes in, you get a tax deduction, but you have to pay the tax at some point, and that's when you either take it out on your own or you reach age 73 and the IRS forces you to take it out. That'll be going up to 75 in 2033 if you turn 75 in 2033 or later, but you have to take the money out and pay tax on it. So that is a negative. So let's move on to what I think is the second best investment option, and that would be a Roth IRA. So a Roth IRA is used to save for money if you have after-tax money, the money that you've already paid tax on, and you want to invest it somewhere where it can grow tax-deferred and also take it out tax-free. So the pros, one of the pros for a Roth IRA is that when your money goes in there and it grows, and provided you take it out and follow the provisions that the Roth IRAs require, which is generally being 59 and a half or having your account open 5 years, your contributions and your gains are also tax-free. So that is the biggest pro, I would say, of a Roth IRA. You also, because Roth IRAs are offered by different companies, depending upon the company you work with, you could have a very large selection of investment options. I've mentioned on past podcasts that I use TD Ameritrade Institutional and Charles Schwab as my broker-dealer or for my clients, my custodian. So if you had an account with one of those two places, you have access to thousands of investments, many mutual funds, any stock or bond or CD. So you have really large investment selection to build your portfolio the way that you want. Roth IRAs are also not subject to RMDs, which is really great. Because of the fact that you already paid tax on the money, when you take it out, therefore it's not taxable, so currently there's no RMD. So you could leave the money in there your entire lifetime, past 73 or 75, and then leave it to your spouse. Your spouse could also leave it in there their entire lifetime. It would only be when your spouse had passed away if a non-spousal beneficiary, such as your children or a grandchild or a friend, inherited the account, that then they'd have to take the money out and start distributing the money. So it can allow you the ability to create quite a windfall, or multi-generational wealth, as they say. You also, at any point, another pro is that you can take your contributions out without any penalty at any time. So whatever you put into the Roth, the contributions, let's say this year you put in the maximum for somebody under 50 of $6,500, you could take that money out without penalty. It's only when you start taking out the profits or the gains that you have to worry about penalties or taxes. So let's jump into the cons of the Roth IRA. Probably one of the biggest ones, it's after-tax money, so there is no tax deduction you're getting when contributing to the account, but that's also giving you the ability to have the money be tax-free. Roth IRA contributions are subject to an adjusted gross income limitation per year. And so currently, if you're single, your adjusted gross income is under $144,000, you would fully qualify. And as a married couple filing jointly, it'd have to be under $214,000. So if you find yourself over those limits, that's where you want to learn more about what's known as a backdoor Roth IRA, and I have some episodes on that, as well as a couple blog posts that I'll link here. So that's what you want to use in that situation. Just like a 401k, you have to generally wait until 59 and a half to take out your profits in a Roth IRA. There are a few exemptions, and the maximum contribution is pretty low, as I mentioned. You can only put in $6,500 per year per person if you're under 50, and if you're over 50 this year, it's $7,500. Now that amount goes up generally every couple of years, but it's not going up by large amounts. So lastly, let's move on to what I think is my third favorite savings option for retirement. And this is a little, maybe not what you would think for retirement, but that would be using a health savings account, or HSA. So the reason I'm so big on HSAs is because they're the only triple tax-free account that's out there. What that means is that you get a tax deduction on your contribution, just like a 401k. Any profits you have or gains in the money while it's in the HSA grows tax-free. And then when you take the money out, if you use it for health-related costs, it's also tax-free. So because of that, that's why I'm such a big fan of these accounts. And another pro is that many expenses qualify to withdraw tax-free from the HSA, many health-related expenses and some other ones that you might not even be aware of. Best thing to do is just Google what expenses qualify for HSA, and you'll find a list from the IRS of what those are. Your employer can contribute in addition to what you can contribute. So many companies that offer an HSA, you're getting some contribution from your employer, kind of like a 401k. You can keep the account for life, meaning that if you put money into your HSA and don't use it all up by the end of the year, that's not a problem. The money is yours for life. And then your spouse could also take over the account. And then it would only be when your spouse passed away that your family now, your non-spouse beneficiaries, would have to start taking the money out. And if you want, you can also wait until 65, and the HSA can kind of act like a retirement account. You would just pay taxes on what you take out. So it wouldn't be tax-free, but it could be like another retirement account in the sense that you take it out and just pay tax. If you take it out before 65, then it's subject to additional penalties. And many HSAs allow you to invest the money just like a 401k. Now, this depends on your HSA provider. So if you don't have one that's giving you a large selection of investment options, preferably a lot of low-cost index-based strategies, then you should consider moving your HSA to another provider. I like Fidelity. I've mentioned this before. That's where I have my HSA. And then the last pro is that you can reimburse yourself at any point after the expense has occurred. And this is where you could really allow this HSA to build up significant value for you. So rather than using it like most people do, is they use the debit card, they put the money in and they take it out. They're not really getting the benefit of compound interest. So how I would suggest is that you put the money in and that you pay for those out-of-pocket expenses yourself, and then keep a list of them. You track the list of expenses in Excel and also keep the receipts. And then at any point, once your money has grown, you can take the money out and reimburse yourself. So if you put the money in and let's say you wait 5 or 10 years later, you've had a lot of growth in the HSA, great. Take the money out and reimburse yourself. And you can you can wait as long as you want, but I just think you want to wait a while to really get the benefit of compound interest so that you're paying yourself back with your gains and you leave your principal alone. So what are some of the cons? You have to be on a high deductible health plan as defined by the IRS. So what does that mean? Well, there's a minimum deductible, and for an individual, that's $1,500, and the maximum out of pocket would be up to $7,500. So if you could be in a high deductible plan that doesn't qualify for an HSA if it has a greater out of pocket maximum than $7,500. So you really want to check to make sure you qualify for this HSA. Chances are if you qualify, your employer offers it, but if not, you can double check that. The family deductible is a minimum of $3,000 and then $15,000 maximum out of pocket. So you do unfortunately have to be on an HSA or a high deductible plan. That's definitely negative because years ago there weren't high deductible plans and you probably were paying a lot less out of pocket for health insurance. But now, if you are in a high deductible plan, you do have the negative of being responsible for more of that out-of-pocket costs, but you do have the added benefit potentially of the HSA. The contribution limits are low. It's $3,850 per individual, double that, or $7,700 for a family. And there's also an over 55 catch-up of $1,000, so you can put $1,000 on top of that if you are over 55. And you and your spouse can both do that. You would just need your own HSA account to do that. Your employer contributions count towards the maximum. So unlike a 401k, whatever your employer puts in is going to eat away into your individual or family maximum. And a family plan, just as a reminder, is just two people. So if you're either married or you have a child who's a dependent, that counts as a family plan. There also are penalties, as I mentioned, if you take the money out before 65 and it's not for health-related costs. It's a 20% penalty plus taxes, so that is pretty steep. And a negative is you have to track these expenses yourself, keep track of them. The best thing is to keep the receipts, track what you've paid, so that if you ever do get audited by the IRS, you have good records to back up what you've done. And some HSA providers can have high fees, either high fees to have the account, high fee investment options, or just for keeping cash. Some of them pay very little interest. Right now, as you know, if you've been a listener of this episode, these podcasts, interest rates are very high, so you can easily get like 4 or 5% on money market. And if your HSA isn't offering that, then that could be another reason to think about transferring. So as I mentioned, Fidelity is a great option if you're not happy with your HSA provider. And to transfer at any point, you could open up an HSA account somewhere else and transfer your money over to that, and then keep putting money into your existing account through payroll deduction, and then just sporadically transfer the money over to the other HSA if it has better investment options, lower costs, etc. So I hope you found this helpful as far as what I would say are the 3 best ways that you can easily be saving for retirement. It doesn't have to be complicated, right? The key thing here is to automate it. Make sure you're saving the money. Make sure that you're investing the money properly, right? You're keeping an eye on costs, and this will go a long way towards saving for your retirement. As always, if you have a listener question, head over to retirewithryan.com and click on Ask a Question. Hope you have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you next Wednesday. Take care.